This is an automatic cable stripper and twister, and it's worth its weight in gold. It's another of these industrial items that cost a lot at the time, but I really needed to actually use one of these because I was terminating so many cables. And the reason I bought it was for the Fairground lighting controllers, where on each of the power cards, I found that the best way to terminate these cards was with bullet crimps, because I looked at various 8-pole connectors, but the one that was only that had the highest current rating, because I really wanted a just overrated connector, was just standard bullet crimps with the fully insulated cups that go over them, and it meant they could tuck in quite nicely under the panel. But it did mean that every card had 8 cables, 2 brown, 2 red, 2 orange and 2 yellow, which was the colour code 1, 2, 3, 4 for the channels, and it didn't matter which way around they went. But because there were 8 cables and 16 ends needing stripped then and twisted, it meant that if I did a batch of 30 cards, it would mean the best part of 500 strip and twist. And it just so happened at the time that I had a fairly large batch of these that I was making in the evening. During the day, I was working a job terminating a large panel with over 100 Sockapex connectors on it with 18 cores each. And all day I was stripping and twisting, and it ended up wearing the skin away in my fingers, because it didn't seem to work too well with gloves. With the fingers, I ended up, well, gloves would have been better. It physically wore through the skin into the sort of lower layer, and it caused a lot of pain for a while. Even after it had healed, you could feel the discomfort. But it did pass after a time. However, coming home in the evening, it was just a bit daunting when I was going to have to make more of these and more stripping and twisting, and it was getting quite sore. So I think I got this from RS Components. Not sure. Was made by Abco AB Engineering. Not sure if they're still about. This was a very long time ago. And it comes with a very DIY-ish looking power supply using standard cases, but made to full sort of spec. Look at the state of this cable, it's manky. But I'll demonstrate how this works. So you've got a detachable cable guide that you actually poke the cable through, and when you put it through, it's got this sort of rotating section. The whole thing actually spins, although you're holding the cable still, but it's got a little anvil, and it's got a sort of cone that sticks out here, a little sort of spike that goes into this cone in the unit, and you can adjust that in and out, and when you do, it actually varies the position of this, because this can go backwards and forwards a small amount, and it's not a huge amount, but it's just enough to adjust the depth of the cutting blade. At the back, you've got a bolt that goes in through a locking nut, a knurled bolt, and it adjusts a wee plate at the back to determine how deep the cable's going to go in before it reaches the end stop. And if I find the correct bit here, so this aligns it up, locks it on so it rotates, and also adjusts the sort of the blade cutting depth. Watch how fast this thing strips cables. So I'm going to turn it on. It's going to be a bit noisy. Find another cable. And as you can see, that is just really fast, particularly when it's got this heavy cast sort of metal base. When I had it screwed to the bench, you could actually get into a rhythm and really sort of thump the wires into it and pull them out. Very, very good. And then, of course, just a crimp would go easily over that tightly twisted cable. And you'd use a ratchet crimper just to crimp that down. Very, very straightforward. And saved a lot of grief. When you feed the next cable in, let's feed it in just to show you this, it automatically ejects the slug of the previous cable, which has just dropped out there. So let's pull this out, and I'm going to take this off now and show you what's inside. I had one slight niggle with this not long after I got it. It's got a very powerful motor in here, and the back housing of the motor popped off, but it didn't seem to actually, it physically broke part of the sort of plastic casting or moulding, but it didn't seem to affect its operation. I should have actually returned it, given it was so expensive at the time. So here is the plunger that sets the depth. When the cable goes in, it physically hits that plunger and it can't go any further. The blade assembly that goes up and down here, I'm going to have to doodle this actually, it's the best way to show it. So if you've got the drum that you put the cable in through, and it's got the conical tapered adjuster that you basically put a screwdriver in here and wind that backwards and forwards, and it just adjusts this. The mechanism there is pivoted, so we've got the main body here that the anvil goes through. So the little middle bit comes through, little anvil, so the cutting blade can cut into it. That's that little bit there. The end stop, and then you get the cutting blade itself, which is an assembly that has that pin that rides in that cone and also locks onto the front to spin it. And when you push the cable in, there's an assembly that looks like this. It comes down with a tiny little blade. I don't know if you can even change the blade. I suppose it doesn't get an awful lot of wear, it's just on plastic. I've never had to change it. When you push the cable in, it pushes that up and it swings up out the way. The cable goes in past it, but when you pull that back out, this then swings back down and it bites into the cable and slices it through to the appropriate depth. But as you then keep pulling, because you're holding the cable still, it stops the cable slug being pulled out, the insulation slug. And as you pull the cable out and it's spinning, it twists the copper cores, the strands, and then the cable releases. And it takes a bit of fine tuning to set this up, but once you've actually set it up, it works very well. Is this going to work if I was actually to do it? This might work if I do it like this, without actually putting the safety cover over. Let's try it and see what happens. So you can see the slug has been kept in there, and then when I push this in, it ejects out of the bottom. Yeah, very clever. Very kind of simple, but nicely engineered, and it works a treat. So that is that. Now, some people have been saying I should do another questions and answers, and I think that's a good idea. So, if you've got a question for me, any question about anything at all, leave it in the comments section down below. And that pretty much concludes this video. I shall answer those questions in another video in the future, which I might do like I've done the other videos in the past, that I build something, and while I'm building it, answer the questions, because to be honest, it was quite enjoyable when I did that last time. And that's it. So if you like this video, if you like this type of content, then remember to click subscribe to the channel for more.